a small roadster to replace the brilliant Vauxhall VX 220. Double wishbones all round, limited slip diff, manual gearbox, and 260 horsepower. You can imagine the excitement when this thing was launched in 2007. Except that in a bizarre twist of fate, despite starting out as a Vauxhall concept, this never sold in the UK. And even in Europe, it only lasted for 3 years. So what happened? In this video, I'm going to tell you the insane story of the Vauxhall that we never got, and whether we missed out on it or not. To understand why the UK never got it, you have to follow one of the strangest development stories of any modern car. This thing started off as the Pontiac Solstice, a US market only roadster. Then Vauxhall's engineers in Luton took it, redesigned it as a one-off concept car to celebrate the company's centenary. It was called the VX Lightning. General Motors being General Motors, they saw a chance to spread the costs. So they took that concept and rebadged it as the Saturn Sky for the US market, and then spun that off as the Opel GT for mainland Europe. And here is where it gets weird. The US factory building these was never tooled up for right-hand drive, which means that the GT was always going to be left-hand drive only. So the car, designed to celebrate Vauxhall's 100th birthday, was never made as a Vauxhall and never sold in the UK. And if that wasn't enough, an unrelated disaster killed this car off after just 3 years of production. We'll talk a bit more about that later, but first, let's take a look around and see if we really did miss out. Outside, you can't deny it looks good, and it has some VX 220 influences. It is larger and softer, but it definitely has presence. I have to say, the back end isn't my favourite angle. I find it a little bit too high, not a huge fan of these lights. On this car, it is markedly improved though by having an extra aftermarket lower splitter that balances out a little bit. Inside, it's surprisingly decent. The materials and the build is pretty much, I'd say, on par, perhaps even better than a 2007 Mazda MX-5. And that's really saying something, because US interiors used to look like they were made out of recycled Kinder Egg toys. There were two types of interiors, either all black or premium, as in this one, and you can see it has the two-tone coloured leather and a few other little upgrades, but they all got this level of sort of shiny plastics here and so on, so it's really quite a nice place to be. The one thing I would say is, for a car that looks quite wide, there doesn't seem to be a lot of space for the lower part of your body. We have a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo with 260 horsepower. Now, it has twin scroll turbos, variable cam phasing, twin balance shafts, and even the valves are operated by roller, finger and follower. So GM really threw some tech at this thing. Weirdly, the manual gearbox is only a 5-speed, but the engine is so torquey that maybe that's all it's ever needed. What is definitely welcome is that it has rear-wheel drive, double wishbone suspension all round, a proper mechanical limited slip diff at the back. So no fake brake-operated traction control trickery here. Time now to find out what it's like on the road. Now, this particular car has a couple of subtle-ish mods. The first is that it has a remap which brings power up from already 260 to a very, very tasty 300. And in order to be able to handle that power, it has slightly bigger brakes, and therefore to clear them, it also has bigger tyres, up from 18, well, bigger wheels, up from 18 to 20 inches, which is going to make it, I think, quite interesting on our potholed English roads. The suspension is actually standard, but I think that because of those licorice thin tyres, you can kind of feel every bump. It has a little bit of deep down polish, so the damping feels quite good, but there's no getting away from that you're feeling every bump through your bum. Now, spacers are a little bit lacking below. On a short drive like this, you probably wouldn't even notice, but my leg is resting against the center tunnel there, and I think that if you were to go on a longer trip, it might start to irritate a little bit more. Also, in terms of storage, there's nothing in the pockets, there's nowhere to put your phone, so it's not the best. This is where it matters though, so let's take it through the gears for the first time. Wow, so it is definitely quick. And in Europe, it only cost a few €100 more than the Astra VXR, which was front-wheel drive and had 20 less horsepower. So it was definitely great value. And I think that the extra 40 horsepower from the remap doesn't hurt either. One thing I would say though is that although you can't fault it technically because there's lots of power there, the mid-range is particularly impressive, and it's smooth, so it's happy to rev to just past 6. It's a little bit anodyne, so revving it doesn't give you any better sound. It kind of seems to remain the same all the way through, and this has a slightly better back box as well. It doesn't completely change the sound, but it makes it a little bit fruitier. But even then, it's just not sort of spicy enough for me. It doesn't encourage you to really pull it through the gears. It really is a bit of a weapon, this thing, and let's see what it's like round the corners. Plenty of grip. I think these little tight bends here will show us what's going on. Right, I'm just going to slow down a little bit because I'm not sure how much cabin noise there is, but I think it was really impressive just how quickly it went round those little twisty bits. And the body structure feels impressively stiff. I really can't feel anything that's telling me that we are now in an open top car. There's no shimmies, there's no rattles, there's nothing coming through the steering wheel. So that's all really welcome. But somehow, I'm just not quite getting satisfied. It's almost as if the car is just technically excellent on paper. I just can't put my finger on exactly what it is which isn't quite working for me. Maybe these faster sweepers will give me a little bit more insight. The steering's quick enough, the front end bites well. You know, and it's going through this section, I'd say as quick as almost as anything else that I've driven around here. So it's very, very capable. Okay, but I'm getting more of an idea of what the problem is. The steering, which is quite well calibrated in terms of speed, is a little bit numb. Something I find a little bit frustrating about its cornering attitude is it doesn't seem to be altered too much by the throttle. So once you're in the corner, trying to either diminish the input or accelerate, it doesn't make much difference to your trajectory, and that just makes it feel like it's less interactive. And then you have that engine which has a lot of power but doesn't encourage you to wring it, to really try and get the most out of it. So all in all, you have something with immense torque which would probably be better suited as a very rapid mini GT. It's very capable of going as quick as an MX-5 on the same road. I think it would probably be quicker. It feels like it has more grip even. But it's not tactile enough to reward hard driving. Now the ride on this one would definitely get a bit taxing after a while, but I'm just not sure how much I can blame the car and how much I should blame the bigger wheels on this one. Gearbox, I have to say, is pretty much spot on. I'm quite astounded that this was based on an American design, because in my experience American cars just don't seem to work on our roads, but I think maybe their more modern stuff, they sort of made up a little bit of the gap that there used to be between the products, because only thing I can really fault this car with is a lack of interior room for the exterior size, and also just that it's not quite as involving as I would like. The original reviews also criticised the roof as being too finicky to put up and down, but I have to say, having seen it today, it didn't seem that difficult to me. Perhaps though, an MX-5 roof is a little bit slicker. It's quick, good value, and had lots of potential. So why did they only produce it for 3 years? That's another crazy story. So in 2008, General Motors, with a financial crisis, was going to go bankrupt, had to be bailed out by the US government. As part of that, they had to do a big restructuring to try and make the company more efficient. And that meant that they closed down Saturn and Pontiac and the factory that made this car. So after 3 years, that was the end for the GT, which is really quite a shame and a little bit ironic considering how the whole project started out. So it's a real automotive anomaly, this thing, because it started off as a Vauxhall concept. That then morphed into an Opel for Europe, which was though made in America and based on a Pontiac, and ultimately killed by a recession. So did we miss out? Maybe. But the story alone makes this one of the most interesting cars of the 2000s. Thank you so much for watching. Huge thanks to Chrissy, who came down all the way from Germany so that I could try out his car. Look forward to seeing you all for the next video.